Good evening. Welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today we have an Edgar Winter. How are you?
I'm great. Are you ready to rock and roll out there?
I am, and I'm very excited. You are an icon, a legend, and we're going to talk about the album you did with for your brother, who's another legend himself. So this is a pretty exciting talk for me. I've been a fan of you and your brother for a long time.
Well, thank you. It was such a life-altering experience making this album. And I had thought that it would be highly emotional, and I knew it would stir up a lot of old childhood memories. And oddly enough, I was very much opposed to doing a tribute album in the beginning. Johnny passed away in 2014, and immediately after that, I got lots of offers from various companies, and they all asked questions like, how soon can you do it? We want to strike while the iron is hot. What guests, artists can you guarantee?
Kind of creepy.
It just sounded so much like commercial exploitation of
Right.
Johnny's name. I just didn't want, it wasn't something I wanted to be a part of at the time. Plus, I was just emotionally devastated and wasn't ready to make the record, in all honesty. And shortly after that, there was a tour that we were both booked to play together with our respective bands. In other words, Johnny was going to play with his band, I would appear with my band, and we would have jamming at the end. And I thought, well, surely this is going to cancel. But
Yeah.
much to my surprise, the promoters wanted it to go on as planned with me and my band as the headliners. So the first night after doing Frankenstein, which is my usual closer, I did Johnny Be Good and Jumpin' Jack Flash, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, a couple of Johnny's songs, and dedicated the end of the set to him. And there was just such an outpouring of love and respect from the fans, and everybody was so nice, like all the other artists, being a multi-act show, came up and jammed, and it turned into a sort of a tradition. And it made me realize that it wasn't just record company people, but Johnny's devoted and loyal fans that would really want to see this happen. So that's what started me thinking about it. And
Well, it's great, and I do think the timing is good the way you did it when you heal. I think when a person passes, the record labels are like piranhas, but they forget, that like you're like he wasn't just a great guitar player, he was my brother. He was like my other half, or someone's father dies, or like, like they don't Taylor Hawkins, who was on this album, his sudden passing, they waited. You gotta give time, you know, and this is organic. This is very natural sounding. It's like a bunch of friends. It's a celebration, the album, to me.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you've heard it, and I
Oh
hope
yeah.
people out there listening will. I want to thank three people primarily. First and foremost, my wife Monique, to whom I've been happily and blissfully married some 43 years now. If it weren't for her, I don't think I would have made the record. She convinced me to do it. And a lot of times I trust her intuition more than my analytical
You
thinking
are a
about
smart
what I
man then.
career was. So when we talked it over, she was absolutely definite. She said, "Well, you always talk about how Johnny's your all-time musical hero, and if it weren't for him, you wouldn't be where you are today. Well, here's your opportunity to acknowledge that." And I just want to thank Monique for giving me the strength and courage to make the record, the love and support to do it. The next person I want to thank is Ross Hogarth, who started out as the engineer and mixer, but actually ended up being producer and co-creator. And he had so many amazing suggestions for guest artists. He really kept things on track. It would not be the record that it is without him. But he suggested people like Doyle Bramhall Jr., who I knew of as having played with her at Clapton, but I didn't know what a great and accomplished acoustic slide guitarist he is, and how
Yeah.
much he was into the Delta blues. He suggested John McPhee with the Doobie Brothers to do slide on Highway 61. He had done the Taj Mo album with Taj Mahal and Kev
Yep.
Mo, and I knew that he was close with Kev Mo, and the one of the two songs that I wrote, the original songs that I wrote specifically for the album, one of which was Lone Star Blues, that I wanted an iconic blues master, and Kev Mo was the perfect guy. I'll talk some more about that specific song, but
Yeah.
the point I'm making here is just thanking Ross. He was just like another thing he did. We realized toward the end of the album that we didn't have anything by Muddy Waters, and that was really
Right.
Johnny loved and idolized Muddy, and I think one of the high points of his career, certainly in his mind, was having the opportunity to record and play with Muddy. That meant the world to him. And as soon as Ross said it, I said, "Oh wow, how could I not have thought of that and realized that?" So we got Bobby Rush, who's a great blues Grammy winning artist, and who I didn't know, but he's actually, I thought of him as one of the Chicago blues guys. So we
Yeah.
wanted that song, Got My Mojo Working. It's sort of like Muddy's anthem, and a song that was perfect for the album. So Bobby, he's like, I couldn't believe it. He was like in his 80s. And when he did that song, it was like a blues guy in his prime. It was just, and he was full. I didn't know he knew Johnny. And this turned out to be the case. A lot of these artists were longtime friends, people who I knew and had played with. But there were also a lot of people who I had never met or just talked to in passing. And they all had done these multi-act blues festivals and shows with Johnny. They all had Johnny stories. And that was the case with Bobby, which I hadn't even been aware of, but he was full of Johnny stories. And it was just such a warm feeling. Same thing happened with Joe Walsh. Like Joe and I go way back to when he was in the James Gang. And I'd asked him to play Johnny Be Good. And he said, well, that song, it's Chuck Berry classic. I don't know what I can bring to that. And he listened to a bunch of songs and surprisingly chose Stranger, which I'll hopefully talk a little bit
Yeah.
about later as well. But a
Yeah.
beautiful ballad and very uncharacteristic of what Johnny would have written. But since Joe picked the other song to play on, I said, well, at least let's sing the song. So I came over to his house, and we had arms around each other, and we were go, go, Johnny, go, Johnny, be good. It was just like when Johnny and I used to sing that song together as kids. And it just seems like such an obvious idea, but it has a very particular and special significance to both Johnny and me, because it actually, in a sense, launched our professional careers. When we were just kids, Johnny's first band was called Johnny and the Jammers.
Yeah.
And I guess I was like 10 or 11 years old. He was 13, 14. And the hottest song we knew was Johnny Be Good. So we entered this talent contest. We went on, we played, and we won. And first prize is you get to make your very own record. So we did a song called School Day Blues that Johnny wrote. It was the first recording we ever made. And so who knows, if it hadn't been for Johnny B. Good, that might never have happened. And so, of course, Johnny recorded it on his first Columbia album, and I knew it had to be part of this album. And it's not only Johnny's story, but it's a story of every kid coming from humble beginnings, who picks up a guitar and dreams of being a star. So I was so glad that Joe, joined me on that. And then we got a great Texas guitarist, David Grissom, to do the guitar, and he just killed it. He had listened to both versions, the original Chuck Berry and Johnny's, and
Yeah.
right down the middle, very, very cool. But just in general, stuff like that Ross did was just immeasurably beautiful. And like I said, wouldn't be the record it is without him. The third person I want to thank is Bruce Quarto, who's the president of Quarto Valley Records. And Bruce wanted to do the record for all the right reasons. When I talked to him about it, he loved Johnny's music. He was totally familiar with it, and he said, "Come on, Edgar, we've got to bring this music back and give people, either the fans who remember Johnny, or people that possibly have never heard his music, the opportunity to hear that." And he said, "You can take as long as you want. You can, I don't, whoever you want to invite to be on it is okay with me." And I told him, I said, "Well, I think it'll probably take a year to make, and I don't want to rush it." It ended up taking 3 years to do.
Wow.
With the onset of COVID, and
Yeah.
that was what complicated the whole issue, because I had made it clear that I wanted to be present for every session and every performance by any guest that was going to be on it, and that was the case in the beginning. But toward the end, it got to be impossible to do that. And thankfully, Ross was there. Like, Ross went up to Santa Barbara when Michael McDonald sang his magical vocal on the song Stranger that Joe Walsh ended up playing on. So anyway, I want to thank Bruce for believing in the project, wholeheartedly from the very beginning, and allowing it, to develop, as you said, organically. And it really took on a life of its own. So basically, there you have it. So shoot with any further questions.
Wow. First, I feel like with all that great acceptance speech, I feel like I should give you like a Grammy. You might get a Grammy though. This is a good album. You might need to shorten it before the music comes on, but I think it's a good acceptance. Gives everybody credit. And this album, I can see it winning an award. I actually can. On a serious note, I think it's fantastic. I do want to say, I just want to hop into these songs, but I want to say one thing. I think definitely your brother's got to be going, you did him right. You did him right. You got to feel good, because the album, the production does not sound like it's uneven. It sounds like you had the best band for the whole album. It feels solid. Just no, doesn't feel uneven in the songwriting, the production, which says a lot,
Well,
I do.
thank you.
Yeah.
One reason for that is the fact that Greg Bissonette, who is, I just think, one of the
Great drummer.
greatest drummers.
Yeah.
He is a drummer with Ringo's all-star band.
Yeah.
Ringo ended up playing on the song Stranger, and that came about as a result of with Michael McDonald eventually doing the vocal. And that, again, that was Monique's idea. We were sitting around listening to the song. I had done a vocal on it, which was okay. And she just out of the blues, Michael McDonald's voice would sound just great on that song. And as soon as she said it, I said, wow, I could just hello, pretty stranger, that
Yeah.
haunting quality that
Only
it
only
just
he can do.
perfect, right? And it's so instantaneously identifiable. But Joe, having played guitar, I don't know if you and everybody out there is aware of this, but Ringo is married to the beautiful Barbara Bach, and
Mhm.
Barbara's sister Marjorie is married to Joe, so they're
Oh,
brothers-in-law.
I did not know that. I just knew the marriage part, but that's
And
cool.
I thought, well, because it was sort of an impossible dream to get Ringo to play on this record. I didn't think I really didn't think he would do it. I don't think he plays on that many artists' records. Uh, but finally, I got up the nerve to call him and ask him, Edgar, I'll do it for you. And I just it just touched my heart. I said, "Oh, this is just the greatest." So you've got Michael McDonald, Joe Walsh, and Ringo Starr.
You
What
know, the
an
Doobie
interesting
Brothers, the Doobie Brothers, an Eagle,
combination
and a
of people.
Beetle all in one album.
Never expect,
That's
to
insane.
hear on the same record, much less the
Same song.
exact same song. But the first question in my mind was, should it just be a straight ahead blues record?
Mhm.
And just in honor of Johnny and the legacy that he left, because we have very different musical tastes. We both love
Yeah,
the blues, uh, but Johnny loves the old acoustic Delta style blues, the people like Muddy Waters, at Lightning Hopkins,
right.
John Lee Hooker, Howlin' Wolf, all those guys. And I kind of gravitate more toward the urban blues, people like Ray Charles, B.B. King, Bobby Blue Bland, a lot of big horn bands.
Mhm.
Uh, and uh, because of that, I just never imagined that I would do a record like like this. So the first question, as I was saying, should it just be all Johnny's straight ahead blues, or should it be more of a tribute from me personally to my brother and incorporate a lot of the more obscure songs that happen to be my own personal favorite
Right.
songs, like Stranger, like that's definitely not a blues song. It's a beautiful ballad, has uh, it's really melodic. It has interesting chords, and uh, it just reveals a sensitive and more vulnerable side of Johnny that he doesn't usually uh, display. And so my answer to that question was that it should be a balance of both, and that's what I tried, to achieve with the record. Was first of all, I knew like there are the obvious songs that people are going to expect to hear, like Rock
Mhm.
and Roll Hoochie Coo and Alive and Well. Uh, and then that you just think when you hear those songs, you think of Johnny. Then there was Johnny Be Good that I already mentioned, but there are a lot of songs like that Johnny became very closely associated with. Songs like Jumpin' Jack Flash, Highway 61. I
Yeah.
mean, Johnny loved the Stones, and he loved Dylan, that the whole mystique. We used to do lots of uh, Bob Dylan songs, Highway 61 for sure, Hey Mr. Tambourine Man, and like Rolling Stone. Uh, so uh, I felt like, that was one that should be on. Also, it was one of Johnny's slide vehicles. And well, one of the things about Johnny that I think that a lot of people, well, several things, and all reasons for my wanting to do this record that I don't think people are aware of.
Mhm.
But of course, I'm prejudiced, but I really feel like if you think about all the great guitarists that have ever been, and like people now like Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, I Jimi Hendrix. I put Johnny up there. I class him with those greatest guitarists, and I just feel like he was underappreciated. And the other thing that he did that I don't think people are aware of is his fusion of blues and rock. And for him, that was a sort of an interesting dichotomy and a conflict in a way, because he loved blues. That was his first love. He always went back to he was true to the blues, and he played the music and he lived the life. And I love him for that. But he's also a great rock player.
Yeah, yeah.
And the point being that there are so many great electric blues guitar players, like Stevie Ray, similar in certain ways. But I think the thing that separated Johnny was his acoustic style, his slide playing. Uh, like there are a lot of great electric blues guitarists, but I don't think anybody that's really a dying art, and there are
Yes.
so few people around now that know all of those alternate tunings and can play that authentic style of slide guitar. And he was just masterful at that. And Highway 61 is a perfect example of that. Meantown Blues also.
Mhm.
So talking about the song selection, there were certain songs that Johnny wrote that I felt had to be on. Meantown was one of them, and I'm Yours and I'm Hers, which featured Billy Gibbons, and
Yeah.
yeah, Billy, Billy he just really killed it uh vocally. And that was a song that I was not going to sing because, as I mentioned, being married for 43 years, I wasn't going to sing I'm Yours and I'm Hers and somebody else's too. I thought, who's the perfect person? Oh, Billy go, uh, Billy was the perfect guy to,
For it.
do that. Plus, I just thought, like, we've done lots of shows with ZZ Top, and if if Billy's gonna play guitar, I want to hear him sing, because his voice is so distinctive and has so much character. And he was a perfect guy, to do that.
That.
But I just wanted to Drown in My Own Tears was another one that's not typical of what Johnny would normally do. And I always felt like he included that song, that he did that song especially for me, uh, because he knew how much I loved Ray. And I remember when we were recording the record, one day he said, "Hey, Edgar, why don't we I would just uh, like to do Drown in My Own Tears, and have you play the piano just like Ray, and do the horn arrangement." And he didn't even put guitar on that song. And I've, I thought he did it uh, especially for me, because he wanted to give me the opportunity to do something that was in my style. Uh,
That's pretty
and
cool.
and when I sang the song,
Yeah.
record, I I just really choked up, because I felt like not only was I singing it back to him, the way he sang it to me so many years ago when he was so young and vital, and at the top of his game. But I felt like I was singing it to our parents, my mother and father, who passed on, all my bandmates, the people like Jerry LaCroix, who's the lead singer in White Trash. Uh, I'm the last surviving member of the Edgar Winter group, that Dan Hartman, Ronnie Montrose, and Chuck Roth. Uh, so, I struggled through it, and broke down a lot of times. But after I finished doing that song, I felt this immense feeling of serenity, uh, peace, and healing. It was very cathartic and therapeutic experience. And for the most part, the album was just a joyous, uplifting experience. But as I said, it was highly emotional. There was a lot of laughs and a lot of tears, you know, along the way. But you know, I know it's not the album that Johnny would make or would have made, and our approaches are so entirely different. I'm a perfectionist, and that the album Brother Johnny, it's meticulously crafted with so much love and care. Johnny, on the other hand, he would go in and like he'd plug in and sing a song like 3 times. And if they didn't get the take, he'd say, so let's go on to the next song, you know.
He's
And
great like
that's
that.
the blues. That's
Yeah.
that's the real thing. And what that reminds me of is that I'll just mention this. Uh, uh, when Warren Haynes, there were there were a lot of guitar players that Johnny truly loved, and I should mention Derek Trucks along with Billy Gibbons on I'm Yours and I'm Hers, because that's just a fantastic chemistry and such an interesting guitar interplay between the two of them, between Billy and Derek. But two of the people that Johnny loved were Warren Haynes and Derek Trucks, both of whom played with the Allman Brothers back in the day, and now, of course, Government Mule and Tedeschi Trucks.
Yeah.
But when Warren came in, he chose a song called Memory Pain. And another point I'd like to make is that I never thought about a particular guest artist to do any specific song, because I didn't want to do a nostalgia album and I'm not really a fan of tribute albums in general. To me, a lot of times you might as well substitute like copy album or sound alike, and I didn't want to do a sound alike album. I wanted all of these artists to play in their own style, to do Johnny's music, but to do it in their own special way. And I never suggested that anybody try to emulate or copy Johnny. But that having been said, I think of all the guitarists on there, Joe Bonamassa just channeled Johnny the most amazingly, and was not something that I had asked him to do, but and I started out talking about Warren, but I want to say this about Joe first. And this was like, I didn't want anybody on there to do a song that they didn't passionately feel was their song, and a song that meant something to them. So I would give everybody, a song list of stuff. And when I was talking to Joe, I was going down a list, and there were a lot of songs that didn't get on. But when I got to Self-Destructive Blues, Joe just, oh wow, you
My
really,
favorite song on the album. That's my favorite song on the album.
he said, I love that. He said, that was the first Johnny Winter song that I heard. I love that song, and I learned that, and I played it with my band. And so when he came in to do the session, he had Gibson Firebird, old Fender Bassman amp, the exact same gear that Johnny used to use. And I swear, when he started that song, I just closed my eyes, and it was like Johnny, his spirit and his presence was in the room. I was just totally amazed. So that was one highlight for me. And now I want to go back to we were talking about Warren Haynes.
Yeah.
What he did was the same sort of thing happened when we were talking on the phone, and when I said memory pain, you can stop right there. That's the one I want to do. So I love that song because it's sort of more R&B, and Johnny's so much more versatile. I think people really associate him with particularly with traditional blues, and that is first and foremost what he did. But he really was very versatile. And when Warren came in, he walked up to the mic, he plugged in his guitar, and he played the whole song, start to finish, singing and playing at the same time. He did the song. And what are you supposed to do? But you'd be like, in most cases, when a guitar player comes in, they'll say, well, and then we'll focus on the solo. I'll get that down and I'll go out and
Right.
do the vocal. That's usually the way it is. But Warren he did the song exactly the way, and he did it 3 times, just like Johnny would have done. The exact same way he would have played that song with the blues trio. That's the blues that just blew me away when he did that.
That's really impressive.
And he was done.
That is incredible. That is awesome. I do want to say, when you were saying earlier that you think he's not known as being like one of the top guitarists, I believe he's one of the top guitarists. And people that have been on my show, I've done like favorite albums and stuff. But my one of my top 10 albums is Third Degree, hands down. That steel guitar and him playing it, that is like one of the best albums out there. I tell everybody those that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that album is just the guitar is just so dirty sounding. It's just so raw. It's beautiful. I don't, that to me, the album is perfection. Third Degree of his is the best.
Yep.
What is actually your favorite album of his?
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
You mean my favorite album? What,
yeah.
of all time, or
of his?
Oh man, I don't. That's impossible for me to say, because although I love blues, I love jazz and classical, and to me, it would be impossible for me to pick in any album. I love Ray Charles. I think probably Ray had the most influence on me of any artist. Just he plays piano. He incorporates that style of gospel and jazz. He blends those kind of like Mac Rebennack, like Dr. John, but he's just the most soulful singer that's ever been. And even people like that may not think they're trying to copy Ray Charles. He just changed the whole landscape of vocal. There was so much sincerity and soul in his voice that I feel like, so that's close I can, come, but there are so many great albums.
Right. I usually say it depends on the day you ask me, usually for me.
Good question.
It depends on the day. I mean, just how you're feeling that day is usually my favorite. That's why I always say my top 10, because I can't ever funnel down to one. But
no, I could do a top 10 list.
But,
our time would be better spent
on the album. No. Yeah, that's why you figured one off the top of your head.
But some people do really have a favorite album. I'm not one of those guys. But I remember once I was doing an interview, and out of the blue, this guy says, "In 10 words or less, give me your definition of the blues." And I thought, oh, what is you can have the blues, you can sing the blues, you can play the blues, but to define the blues, the blues defines itself.
Right.
And I thought about it I said, well, let me think about that. And at the end of the best thing I could come up with is the blues is transforming suffering into joy. And that's what it has done for me, what I think it did for Johnny, and what I hope it does for everybody. Like there's a lot of sad stuff, my baby done left me, I lost my job, I'm homeless. But there's something joyous about like when you like hear BB sing like a song like nobody loves me but my mother, and she could be jiving too,
Well,
just
I think people love melancholy. People like the
yeah.
melancholy. It makes sometimes people just makes you happy to be sad sometimes. Like it just to feel that
Yeah.
emotion. It's a
Yeah,
very
some of my
powerful
favorite
emotion.
songs are sad songs, and suffering is universal. And I think that there is that Zen aspect
Mhm.
because of that. You know, the blues is you can go anywhere in this world and sit down with any group of musicians and start like a regular 12-bar blues. Everybody can play it. It's just instant connection and
Right.
communication.
But not everybody can do it well. Now,
No,
that's the thing with the blues. You're either really good or you're horrible. Because if you have no soul and they're playing the blues, you go, oh, this is just doing the scales. But if you have
yeah,
it in your heart, no matter how experienced you are, it's the most beautiful thing in the world.
yeah,
And so it just
it
depends
really
on
is. Yeah, if I it like even though all of my career has been about trying to broaden musical horizons and make people aware of all the different styles of music that are out there. And I never could understand from the very beginning why music is separated into these strict genres and like to me it seemed almost like musical segregation. It's like okay, all you cowboys are going to play the country western
right.
stuff, and all these black people are going to play the blues, and all you educated people are going to listen to classical, and then you've got your rebellious kind of jazz
Yeah.
mentality of player people that are digging deep into music. And I just always felt like it's all music, and so. Uh, but if I had to pick anything, uh, I love blues, and I've always thought of blues as the great granddaddy of all music. Like blues, uh, kind of
Yeah.
morphed and developed into Dixieland, and then into jazz, into modern jazz, and then found its way into rock. And I think a lot of times people or either forget or are just unaware of what a profound influence blues has on all the music, the popular music that you hear today. And a
Yeah.
lot of people tend to think of blues as something old that's over with and already happened, but that's not the case at all. The blues is alive and well.
The blues is in a lot of music, and I like to say even jazz is in a lot of rock that people don't realize how much jazz is in modern rock, just the chords and how the songs are built. You
Yeah,
know, it's not the other kind of jazz where the joke is, the joke he says, how do you make $1 million playing jazz? You start with 2 million,
yeah,
because you know, it's a lonely game because not
yeah.
everyone's want to get it. Well, it's a very intellectual thing too. And it's a very heartfelt thing like the blues. So not everyone's going to get that. But it's in there too. So, but blues is so much in rock, so much in heavy metal
Oh,
and everything.
absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
definitely there.
those uh, none of those forms could exist. Blues is the basis of all of that. And
Black Sabbath is like the blues with distortion. I mean, it's
yeah,
Zeppelin, everything is there. That's how it
and the
started.
spontaneity of blues, just a guy sitting down, like in his rocking chair on the street corner, and he's just singing, making stuff up and just singing from his heart. Uh, and is the basis of spontaneity in jazz and in jamming in rock. And you don't, and there's another jamming. There's a lot of jamming on Brother Johnny. And I
Mhm.
like when I when I started to make the album, and as I got into it, I started to question. I said, maybe I'm making too much of a musician's album here, because there's so much jamming and guitar, a lot of soloing. But that's what Johnny did,
That's his fan
and,
base right there. You're not, yeah,
and it wouldn't be true to his spirit otherwise, or true to the spirit of the blues. So I just went ahead and let the album unfold organically. And like uh, the people that ended up as guests were the people who really wanted to be on the album. Like when I asked Billy, like, yeah, it was instantaneous. Oh, we've got to do that, and you know, he was so excited, when he came in to do it.
mhm,
And as I said, like, uh, I was overwhelmed with uh, and you mentioned Taylor Hawkins.
yeah,
Uh, like he was a guy that Ross Hogarth suggested, and I never would have thought of Taylor, but that song. I think that particular song that he played on is without doubt the the highest energy, most rock song. I guess I'll go away. Johnny wrote that song shortly after coming back from rehab, and uh, it's cautionary in the sense that it's the danger of drugs, uh, the uh, the lure of sex, and the love of rock and roll. It
yeah,
incorporates all of those things. And when Ross suggested, I thought, oh, I love Foo Fighters. And because I feel like that's probably the most modern song. A lot
yeah,
of the song are their blues and their rock and roll, but that's really a rock song. It's almost heavy metal. So I wanted a young, modern approach to the vocal. And when Ross suggested Taylor, I thought, oh, that's perfect. And when he came in, it was I had never met Taylor, and he was so sincere and uh and so excited. He was just brimming with enthusiasm, and I tried to engage him in a business discussion, and he just would not hear of it. He said, look, I love Johnny. I love this song. I don't want anything for doing this. I just want to get out there and rock, And rock he did. And it's just so ironic that, that he would put his heart into that song, and then, doing a tribute to Johnny, uh, and then he himself, before the album was even released, dies under such similar circumstances in a hotel. That's exactly the way Johnny passed away, in a hotel room,
yeah.
uh, and it's eerie. It's like a tribute within a tribute, and you know, Taylor, I just, when I think about it, I never because he wouldn't accept anything.
Mhm.
And I never really feel like I got the chance to thank him properly for what he contributed. And just, I'm so happy that, that's probably one of his last performances, but,
Probably is.
you know,
Well, he
having
didn't
it
look at it like that. I mean, this is him doing
right.
this was a gift. That's why he was so special. You
Yeah.
know, that he
But
loved
that's
music.
the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Like when a record company asks me, like, what guests can you guarantee? I thought, I don't. How do I know what it's going to be until I start to do it? Uh,
Yeah.
And as I said, I didn't want to just pick, the usual suspects, all the obvious people. I wanted more of an interesting cast, of players. And like, I don't think you'd expect to see Ringo or Taylor, on there.
No.
And there are a lot of other example, probably Doyle Bramhall, but maybe, well, because he is a blues guy, but uh, it just the way it unfolded, I think, to me was really really magical in a sense, and
Yeah.
you know I am just so happy. Uh, like, I don't think it's not the album Johnny would have made, but I think it is uh, the album Johnny would have wanted me to make for him. And he always encouraged me to follow my heart, even though he loved the blues. Uh, I think he liked it most like when I did more advanced stuff, that reflected my own personal, like, stuff that was jazzier and more classically oriented. He loved the first Entrance album, for example. But uh, you know, and another thing about Johnny that I feel like I should mention, uh, that was a big difference in the way we thought, uh, was the fact that as young kids, we were inseparable. We started playing together when I was 4 years old. Uh, my mother, I don't remember this, but she says we did this old radio show called the Uncle Willie Show. That had an old lady like would play organ, and kids would come and like uh, tap dance or do stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember doing it when I was 6. And I was playing, like, we started out playing ukuleles and singing Everly Brothers songs together. And uh, but uh, back as far as I can remember, Johnny had that drive and ambition. He was going to be a star, and he read all the magazines. He had a huge record collection, and he was Johnny Cool Daddy Winter with the pompadour and the shades and the guitars and the girls. And I was like the I was like the kid, the quiet kid that played all the instruments, and uh, and the ironic thing about that is the fact that after having worked his whole life long to achieve that dream and that great accomplishment, when he seemingly had everything that he had dreamed of, fame, fortune, uh, respect, adoring fans, uh, the you know the whole thing. I remember him saying to me, "Oh, Edgar, I never expected it to be like this. I just feel so isolated and cut off from people. It's like there's this image uh, of me that has I feel invisible, like this has taken over my life. I don't know who to trust or who I can talk to, uh, and it's like it's such a hard thing to explain because uh, fame is just so bright and shiny and attractive. And you would think, how could anybody not be just uh, happy, you know, overwhelmed with gratitude? Uh, and there's no way to explain this unless you've experienced it. It does have all those beautiful things, and but uh, you kind of become a target, and you lose your privacy, and and it definitely plays havoc with your own self-image because you see so much stuff that's written about you. And I always tried to just take it with a grain of salt. I've never had any desire to be famous. And I just love music in and of itself. I love the beauty of chords and harmony and rhythm. And whereas Johnny reached out to the world with his music, I sort of retreated into my own sort of private musical fantasy world. And so we were very different in that way. But the song Lone Star Blues, I tried to capture because Johnny eventually overcame all of that. He
Yeah.
In later life, he came to appreciate what he had. He loved his fans. I've seen him like invite people into his bus or the RV, shake hands with them, sign things, take pictures with them. But he did go through that difficult period of adjustment, of disorientation and disillusionment with regard. He felt like nobody really knew him, or knew who he was. And so I tried to write Lone Star Blues in his voice. See, he never really addressed that specifically. There
Yeah.
was a little of that in Guess I'll Go Away. But I tried to write that as much as I could in Johnny's voice. And the beautiful thing about that song is when, I felt like, well, this song, it has to have a great blues master. And I thought Kebmo would be the perfect guy. And I knew that Ross had worked with Kebmo on that Grammy winning Tajmo album. So he set up a call where I explained the whole thing to Kebmo, and he was so kind and attentive and listened to everything I had to say about why I was making the album and what the
Mhm.
song was about. And he said, well, let me hear it. So he completely broke that song down. He started from scratch. He played all the instruments. He made that song his own. And the thing about it was because it was kind of negative the way that I wrote it, because it was all about that struggle.
Mhm.
But when it came to those choruses and Kebmo sounds like the Lone Star Blues, it was just introduced this note of warmth and compassion. It was like he is like there was all this other stuff in the verses, but he was like the old blues master that was telling the young guy, yeah, things can get tough, but it's going to be all right. And that, I just thank you, Kevmo, for that. Such a, to me, that song now just has a warmth and and sincerity, that it would have otherwise lacked. And
Lacked.
so very cool duet, and Kevmo, and he was perfect for that song.
Every track is killer on it. 17 tracks. I think people are gonna love it. I think you could get new fans. I think, and I also want people to take time to go back and listen to all your other stuff. Your records are always solid. Your last one, the Road Rebel.
Rebel Road.
Rebel Road. Sorry, I got it backwards. Yes, great. Still solid. You're not slowing down.
Well,
I mean,
thank you. I
yeah, I remember when that album
I'll
came
never
out.
hear Edgar Winter talking about a farewell tour.
That's right.
I'm gonna go down kicking and screaming with my boots on.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're not slowing down. I mean, that's a strong album. It's not like it was like an easy listening album. It's a rock. It's good. It's rock. And I remember hearing it when it first came out. I was like, wow, it's great. I just wanted to throw that in there to
Well,
acknowledge
thank you. Well,
other
thank you.
songs. I mean,
And
you
I
really,
hope the same thing. It's part of why I did the record,
yeah,
is that I hope that I I know that people that have followed my music and Johnny's are going to love it. But uh, I also wanted it to be not only a blues album. It's really a rock album. It's a blues rock album.
right.
I wanted to be a tribute to not just to Johnny, but to the blues and to the guitar.
Right. It's a rabbit hole. I think it's a rabbit hole where they can dive in to your work, to your brother's work, to these other artists that are on the album. There's like so many starting points of other music to keep digging into from this. It's like a great diving point.
Well,
That's how I feel.
thank you. I guess we've discussed just about.
Yeah, about everything. Yeah, you did. And, but it's important that people know that you do, and people know your big songs. But your albums are solid all the way through. It's not like you just have like two good songs. And like, I don't know if everybody realizes how good your other albums are. Solid tracks, one after the other. I've always dug. So I want people to just go back and listen to everything, not just this album. This album's going to knock your socks off. But
thank you.
Go back and listen to the other stuff too.
I think one thing that makes this album different than most of my albums is that it has such a definite focus, because a lot of my albums are Rebel Road was pretty much like trying to, make an album like the 70s. And this, this album is very much that way. And I think we're all tempted to feel like the time in which we came up was somehow special. But I really do believe that there are two golden eras in music, the 40s and 50s for big band jazz and swing, and the 60s and 70s for rock. And I think that those are unparalleled. And, there was so much musical freedom in those days. And, bands were making real music. And it was very different. Like, you'd go into the studio with 3 or 4 songs, and you'd actually sit down in the studio and create an album. And then it got to the point where there was so much intervention from record companies, they would want to hear demos of everything to approve the material. And, it just, there was too much business and commercialization that entered into making records. But back in those days, there was nobody looking over your shoulder. You could, you could do what you wanted, and none of that album would ever come into existence if it weren't for that, that climate and, that sense of freedom.
I say it all the time that you would not have had, sorry to step on you, that you would not have had some of these bigger bands if they had to be like today, because there was no one album nurture. It was 3 or 4 albums, and then you go back and listen to it. Your Aerosmith, your Rod Stewart, any band from back then that were big, they had a couple albums before they got big. They worked it on the road. They matured. They grew. That's never going to happen again.
Yeah, and there was artist development then too. Like, you sign with a company and they would support you. You like I did the Entrance album and 2 White Trash albums, and then finally when I did They Only Come Out at Night, I really felt like I owed that album to Clive Davis. Clive had signed me to with CBS. Johnny was on Columbia and I was on Epic. And if it hadn't been for Clive's support, I never would have made those first 3. I never would have made the Entrance album. I probably wouldn't have formed White Trash, and I certainly wouldn't have formed the Edgar Winter group. So I had, those records, they eventually went gold. But when I made They Only Come Out at Night, it was sort of, I felt, like I said, in my mind, I dedicated that to Clive, and I thought, I've received really generous advances for all the music that I've done up to this time. Now I'm going to do something that they can really do something with. But
a lot of artists feel that way about Clive. He gave them the freedom. That's another thing, you won't see again.
I just felt like it was time to engage a wider audience. And Johnny went through that too. He loved the blues, but he also loved rock. He was a great rock player, and management and record companies, they all encouraged him to go in a more rock direction, because they felt like, and we were talking about musical genres. I think a lot of that was generated from record companies, because they they like an artist to be one specific thing. He's either a rock guy or he's a jazz guy or he's a blues guy. And it gives them a target audience, you know, that they know how to promote, you know.
Well, that's what
So
changes, and the record labels become more like banks, and the artists are not artists; they're commodities. And if they know what the product is, it's no longer what you're feeling. They just want that platter, and if this platter worked, they want to sell this product again. That's when it kind of goes out the window.
yeah.
And then
Well,
that's how it changed. That's how it changed for people. Nowadays, you're not gonna do that. Now they want like a cottage industry where you go in and the record companies go, oh, you got your views, you got your Instagram and your YouTube channels, you got all your followers. They want the whole package coming in, you know. Just an
yeah.
artist starting out, just writing songs. So
Well,
it,
I guess it's time to
it
wrap it
is.
up.
It
Last
is.
thing you know,
Yes.
this is something that that I remember from childhood. Uh, and it's funny how memory, certain things you recall that stand out for no apparent reason. But
Mhm.
I was talking about Johnny's dream. I remember this. We were out in our backyard sitting in the treehouse that our dad had built for us, and Johnny was kind of staring up through the branches, and he said, well, one of these days I'm going to make it. And you may not believe it, but you will too. And then he thought another minute and he said, I want you to remember this day and remember what I said. And I still like, I thought, I was just a kid and I thought, well, he's just talking, but I still remember that,
That is a
to
great story. That is a perfect
and
way to wrap it. Yeah.
and I always thought, because as I said, we had that musical bond, but we also had the bond of being albino, and that I think caused us to view the world somewhat differently,
Yeah.
and it drew us even closer together. But I mentioned Johnny being my all-time musical hero. He was also a living hero to me because the way he reached out with his music showed me that being albino could actually not be a drawback, that could be cool. He
Yeah.
actually turned it around and made it work for him. And I always felt like uh whatever happens to me, however many years go by, how old I get, there's one person in this world that I know will understand how I feel and what I've been through in life. And that person was and is my brother Johnny. So that's why I wanted to make uh, this album for him. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of our fans that have followed my career as well as that of Johnny's throughout all of these years. And we love you all and could never have done it without you. And it just has meant the world to us both to be able to do what we most love and see you all out there rocking and having a great time. So, I hope that I'll see you out. We're out here on the road with Ringo and his all-star band. We're
Awesome.
having a blast and we're playing Johnny Be Good. And we're having so much fun. It's really like, with two drummers, it's really powerful. It has a different vibe. But I hope that I'll see some of you out there, at some of these upcoming shows.
I'm sure you
And,
will.
we love you all. And what can I say? But get ready to rock and roll.
And there you go. Thank you for being on the show, man. I appreciate it. It's been awesome.
You're welcome.